Genesis 4:11. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. Shalom Akim. Want to get started off by giving all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kokodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. So today's lesson, we're going to talk about how Esau, which is the biblical name for the so-called Caucasian race, can no longer hide from their true identity, and they can no longer basically be that fugitive which they were cursed as being upon the face of the earth. Okay, in that video you've seen at the very beginning, I've had it for a while now, and you know, when I seen it, it reminded me how when you take the collective history of the Edomites and you follow it back through their history, let's go into the Bible timeline, from the time when they were born, and you had Jacob and Esau, right, to the time that Esau sold his birthright to our forefather Jacob, right, all the way down to the time that Esau got his blessing and also forgave Jacob, right, but basically still in his heart still held that hatred for us, all the way. See, let's just go real quick, all the way through to when they came up in Italy at the time, or Latinum, right? When you get into, this is before Rome, when the Edomites started to move into what we know today as modern day Rome. You had a king there, an Edomite king called King Latinus. He's also described in Genesis 36:9 as King Lotan, or Duke Lotan, excuse me. Right? He is the inventor of Latin. Okay, he comes from the city known as Latinum. Right? So from that time, when they started to establish themselves in the secular world, to let's see, what other things. Where basically Rome started to rise up, right? Now, during this time, Rome was for the most part a city that was, a part of the Japhetic people, right? The people that we know today as the people of the South Seas, like the Samoans, the Fijians, and those people, right? But during this time, 753 BC, when you started to get the inhabitants from Latinum starting to come down out of the mountains and started to come down into Rome province and everything, they started to take over, right, Rome. And it's not until about wasn't until about 100 BC when you have a lot of the what you would refer to as the Edomite Romans basically take over Rome. Okay, until then it was pretty much a mixed nation, right? But then you go on all the way to about this time, about 550 BC, right? This is the time when the Edomites, that were not in the land of Rome, but were what we know as around the Aegean Sea, right? Which the Aegean Sea goes back to the name of Agag, right? Which is the forefather of the Amalekites, right? The so-called Jews today. Well, there you had a stronghold of Edomites who had fled west from the east, over there in the land of Petra, right? Modern day Jordan. Well, they were known as the Macedonians, and they basically were a bunch of sheep herders, right? Basically, people like living off the land. Okay, a bunch of farmers, and it tells you here. It says Edom's line produces Argius, the first king of Macedon, who in 7 generations would produce Alexander the Great, and who claimed they defended or descended from Hercules, right? Which is not really true. They were related to Hercules, right? But remember, Hercules was an Israelite, right? So they basically would be the cousins of Hercules, okay? So, and then going on to there, you have when these Edomites basically tried to kill off the Israelites during the Persian rulership, right? When the so-called Jew Haman, right, or what we call him today, Vocab Malone, tried to cook up a scheme to have all the Israelites killed off in this time, right? To the time when they really started to come up on the scene, and they started to record history itself, right? At the beginning of at the end of the ancient history period, right? You had a man called Herodotus, right, who lived from 484 BC to 425 BC, right? This is the first man to start to record history, not as songs or as, biased views, but to write it down as it happened. Well, besides then, you also had Petra start to become more of a bigger stronghold, right? You had all the Edomites that had gone throughout the world, were in Macedon, were in Latinum, had seen the Roman, Empire, the Greek Empire, and brought those customs, those ideas back to their homeland, and started to envelop, basically copy it, right? Just like these Edomites do with everything, right? They started to appropriate different cultures, and this is where you see the Petra carvings, right? Which follow these Edomites today throughout all their habitations. Look at Washington D.C., France, and all these other places around the world where they conquered, right? To the point where they eventually ended up taking over the Greek civilization. If you want to look that up, you look up the Greek Dark Ages, right? You'll see how the Macedonians came in, conquered the Greeks, and slowly started to assimilate into their cultures, and they became known as the Neo-Greek Empire, okay? Which then spawned, the persona, or the Alexander the Great, for the most part. Alexander the Third, right? We call him Alexander the Greek because this guy was a damn devil when you get into what he was into, right? Now, ultimately, then you have the 4 generals that worked with Alexander, and who split up his kingdom into the creation of new gods upon the earth from the Ptolemy line, right, which was one of the 4 generals. And then you even have Esau's line back in Petra, who started to marry into the Ishmaelites, right? And they basically took on their culture, right? And were started to be known as the Nabateans, right? This is where you eventually would get the mixture of the Arabs and the Edomites that would later on go on to create the Ottoman Empire, or basically the Arab Caliphate Empire that came in and took over the world for a short time during the Dark Ages, I believe that's when it was, right? But this is just showing you, man, how Esau got involved in all these things, right? To the time where, in this time, this is like I was telling you, about 200 to about 100 BC, when the Edomites basically started to get a hold of Rome, and when they did, they started to conquer massive amounts of lands, right? They conquered Africa, right? And they named Africa after the general that conquered it, the Edomite general that conquered it. His name was Leo Scipio Africanus, right? And his brother, Leo Scipio Asiaticus, conquered Asia, and that's why Asia today is known as Asia, right? It goes after this guy's brother's name, right? Then you go on to where the Edomites eventually conquered Carthage, destroyed them. And then this is where you have Julius Caesar come on the scene, right, about 100 BC to 44 BC. Cleopatra, who was a so-called Jew, right, an Amalekite, who descended from the Ptolemies. Then you got Herod, who basically married the Maccabean women, or one of the Maccabean daughters, and basically took the crown of the nation of Israel, right? And you read about him in the Bible, okay? Well, these Edomites, and everything I'm kind of reading, we're walking you through, is giving you an example of how these Edomites have gone throughout history, and they've managed to basically overtake different civilizations and eventually assimilate or appropriate the cultures of those nations that they took over. Okay, this is a custom trait of these Edomites, right? And why is that? Well, it goes back to that first scripture that I read, right, about the curse upon Cain, right? Now, though we're talking about Edom and Esau, but like I read, the curse was on Cain. You got to understand that when Cain died, Cain and his descendants died in the flood of Noah. Cain, he came back in the regeneration, the reincarnation, as Esau. This is why when he came out and he was born, he came out leprous, right? He came out red, as the Bible says. But we all know that when Edomite babies are born, they come out red. Let's actually, which you can see here, right? This is what an Edomite baby looks like when they're born, right? They come out red. Why is that? Well, because their blood is showing through their skin, okay? This is what they look like, okay? So that whole idea that Edomite babies are white, or that the Edomites are white, it's a social construct. It's something that has been melded into your mind throughout time. But the thing is that when you look at what these people's true skin color is, they're pink, right? But this is why ultimately they're referred to as rednecks, or as you see in this picture, when they get suntan, they turn red, right? That's them. Okay. Now that being said, let's go ahead and watch this video real quick.
So this is funny because I'm a babysitter and I usually help the kids with projects. So one of the projects they had to do was do a presentation, like a little paper with their culture. And I asked my boss, and I was like, what's your culture? Because they're very white. And he's like, I don't know, that's why I'm thinking of doing it on your culture. And that's what we did. So that's what we did on Brazil, because they don't have culture. Surprise! So
you see, it's not that Esau doesn't have culture, right? Even though it's a common idiom amongst the Caucasian race that the Caucasian race has no culture. That's not true. They do have culture, but their culture, they're running away from it. And why is that? Well, back, like I said again, because they are a fugitive, right? What do fugitives do? These are people who are running from their past. They're basically running from their crime, right? So that way they don't get their punishment. And in doing so, they leave behind their identity, their goods, right? They take on new aliases. Well, that is the Caucasian race. And back to the image of the Bible timeline, like I said, right? These Edomites, at the point that we went through on this Bible timeline, about 200 to about 400 AD, they had lost the Roman Empire to the Israelites, right? To the so-called Negroes who were brought in previously around 70 AD and as slaves, and who eventually won their freedom and rose up through the ranks and eventually became the emperors, right? This is where you get Constantine the Great, Septimius Severus, and so forth. Well, eventually that would go on to expel these Edomites out of Rome, and they ultimately fled up to the Caucasus Mountains. Now, this also was a biblical prophecy, right? Where in Revelations, where it tells you that Satan would be locked up for 1,000 years, but then he would have to be released again. Well, that is during the time when these Edomites fled into the Caucasus, and then later on, about 1,000 years later, they emerged. When? Well, during the Renaissance. Okay, the Renaissance, which took place around really 1400, but it's 13 to 1700 is when it's officially noted. Okay, and how did this start? Right. Well, you guys got to go back a little bit in history to look when this event happened. Right. It's when Switzerland was established. Right. This is also refers to in Revelations 9:2 when it talks about the bottomless pit. Right. The bottomless pit is right here is in Europe. Okay, Europe is the bottomless pit described in Revelations 9:2. And what is in the heart and the highest point of Europe? Well, that would be none other than your Matterhorn, right, in Switzerland. Okay, and the funny thing is when you look into modern day politics and you look at where the World Economic Forum meets, and all these world leaders come together, they meet in Davos, Switzerland, which is the highest point in Europe, I believe, or the highest city in Europe. So these devils, they fit all these prophecy, okay? And there's a lot more to go through this lesson, but just walk with me, right? But let's read this real quick. It says, Switzerland and the Knights Templars, right? This is recorded in 1291 AD. It says, founded 2.5 months after the last Crusade battle and fall of Aachen, which was the last stronghold of the Knights Templars in May 18th, 1291 AD. The Templars used their vast fortunes, newly gained power to help establish the Edomite banking establishments, which would lead to the rise of Edom, the Renaissance, and the bottomless pit. Because you see, these Knights Templars, when you remember the Crusades, right? Let's go back a little bit in history, right? This is why history is so important, Akim, that you really have to understand this, right? This is why the apostles always say, man, to understand the mystery, you got to go into history, right? But yeah, so like I said, the Crusades took place around 1095 to 1291 AD, and this is where you basically had all of Europe, which for the most part was ruled by by Israel, right, so-called Negroes at the time, but you also had Edomites, right? And out of those Edomites, they basically made up the Knights Templars, okay? And when they ultimately fell, right, in Jerusalem to the Ottoman Empire, right, they ultimately fled back to Europe, but instead of going back to their hovels and being soldiers of their masters who were so-called black people, they ended up carving out a land for themselves, right? And that land was the land of Switzerland. Okay, this is where ultimately the top elites ultimately reside. They all have houses there. This is where the top central bank of central banks, right? The Bank of International Settlements is at, right? This is where the Edomite headquarters is at, right? It's on the highest point, right, of Europe, right? The Matterhorn, right? Well, like I said, ultimately Jerusalem fell to the Ottoman Empire, right? Which was a mixture of Edomites and Ishmaelites, right? Arabs. And then, but while Ishmael was over there, savoring his victory over the Holy Land, right? You had Esau over here basically rebuilding himself, right? Reestablishing himself. And basically, about 10 years after that fact, like it said in that previous thing I just read, right? They established the banking houses, which would later go on to establish the Edomite families. But they ran into a small problem, right? They fell, and everything that they were doing, including the Satan worship, because back then these Edomites, just like always, have always fallen back to worshiping their power, right? That the devil, Satan, Baphomet. This is why the Vatican, which was still under, Israelite control, right, for the most part, it was still somewhat trying to be righteous. They seen this as a threat to their power, and they ultimately, on Friday the 13th, declared to put an end to the Knights Templars, right? It tells you here, it says, after rising to power quickly, the Knights Templars were ordered destroyed by the Pope Clement and King Philip of France. Few would escape to form the secret society of Freemasonry, right? And that's where, like I said, you ultimately get the Knights Templar coming back, but they came back as the Freemasons, okay? And they were established in 1390 AD. And then it tells you, it says, after going into hiding, the Knights Templars formed the Scottish and the York Rite of Freemasonry, which would continue the work of the devil to convert and secret means by covert and secret means, they would publicly form and open 4 lodges in 1717 AD, right? And once the Freemasons were established, you still had the Switzerland government going on, and that's where you had the banking houses established. And what happened there? Well, those banking houses went on to fund families, these Edomite families like the Medicis. And again, I've said it before, but you could go on Netflix and look up that TV show. Has 3 seasons called the Medicis. It's a very good show, right? And though all the actors in the show are all, Edomites, just know that the so-called bad people, the bad guys in the show, were actually Israelites, okay? And the Edomites were portrayed as the good guys, right? Even though they did some scandalous shit in there. Well, they eventually went on to buy the Vatican and basically get an Edomite, Rodrigo Borgia, right? Who we all know is the father of Cesare Borgia, which is the image of white Jesus Christ, who was painted by Da Vinci, right? All done, right? And eventually they would go on to, find the Northern Kingdom here in America. They would go on to enslave and conquer the Northern Kingdom, right? They started to change a bunch of things around, right? Inventing new languages, just like they did back in Latin when they created Latin, right? And then they would go on to pervert the Word of God by creating dogmas and religions, right? The Vatican, now being fully corrupted, right, started to create, abominable heresies by, creating the worshiping of the Virgin Guadalupe. They went on to change out the time and the calendar system to the Gregorian calendar, which we are today, right? They eventually also these Edomites also tried to take over England, right, in 1605 during the Guy Fawkes, plot, right, which is what the whole V for Vendetta comic book and movie is all based off of, right? Basically, were these Edomites who were trying to, get the Israelites who were in power at the time, right? Jake, that was in power, they were trying to ultimately overthrow his ass, or overthrow them and stuff, right? But that failed, right? They got destroyed. But this is why this guy is seen as a hero today, because these Edomites know that that Guy Fawkes was an Edomite trying to put forward the Edomite power structure into England, right? And then you got, a lot of them came over here to the Americas, right? After being persecuted, right? This is the real persecution. So when you hear about the Pilgrims coming over here to the Americas because of their religious persecution, it was because they were being persecuted back in England because of who they came from, okay? This is why America was a big thing for them. They eventually went on to, again, continue to pervert the doctrine. Jesus Christ was given the official name of Jesus, right, in 1632. And then this is where these devils eventually became known officially as white people, which was, like it says here, in an effort to hide inequality by class, the elite segregated the people into colored groups in an effort to divide and conquer, right? So ultimately they did this also all to hide themselves as well, right? to get a new name. This is why you got white people, black people, right? And that's because they ultimately were trying to hide some of the two most important races of people, the Edomites and the Israelites, right? And then you got just a bunch of different crazy things happening, right? You got the Rothschilds started to come into existence. Then you had the Illuminati formed, which was the same time America was formed, right? And that's really ultimately what America was. It was a big, it is a big experiment by the occultist, secret elite that are ultimately trying to bring back Atlantis, right? And this is why they call America the New Atlantis Project, right? That's the Nuevo Order Seclorum, right? Or the new order of the age, right? That's what they're really trying to do, right? They're trying to bring back the world civilization that happened before the Lord destroyed it and pulled Adam and Eve out of it, okay? They went on to basically delude the Bible by releasing and flooding the world with the English Revised Version and the American Standard Version Bibles, right? This right here is where you have the Apocrypha and basically the 14 books of the Bible in the middle of the Bible during the Greek captivity were taken out, okay? And then later on, you got the French Revolution that was fomented by the Small Hatters to basically take over the monarchy in France. You got more perversion of the scriptures by the Mormons. You got the Trail of Tears that were, done upon the northern kingdom, the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuben. Esau went on to fight against Moab. Esau went on to fight against Ammon. And then basically this was Amalek fighting against the American Edomites that ultimately created the conditions for the American Civil War. And, all these things happened. But, the point being is that, here we go. Balfour Declaration takes place. And after this time, this is when these Amalekites who previously had referred to themselves as converts to the Judaism and to the religion of the Jews, they started to refer to themselves as the Jews, right? And it was all, orchestrated by the Rothschilds, right? And Arthur Balfour, right? The Amalek eventually would also go on to take over Russia and destroy its monarchy, right? And then and then Esau went on to invent the TV, right? What's this guy's name? Philo Farnsworth, right? Went on to create the TV, which would eventually go on to control the world, which we're currently living in, right? And then all these things happen, right? These are all things that Esau would eventually go on to do. And at this point, when Esau went up to the space, right, this is when his downfall started to come. After that, that's where you had the prophets starting to show up, starting with Abba Bivens, the One West School, King Masha, continued the reign, and it went on down to the apostles, right? And that continued on until today, right, where you have us brothers out there basically, now teaching and spreading this truth, and waking our people up. And the beautiful thing is that that's now working, right? These devils could no longer be those vagabonds upon the earth, right? Now the world is starting to find out who these Edomites are, right? So, but let's read this first before I show you those videos. This is Isaiah 47:10. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me. Right? And these Edomites, they really did think that they were going to be able to hide their identity and hide who they are and continue to create a one world order and not be identified as being the descendants of Esau, right? All while they're trying to destroy the descendants of Jacob, us Israelites, right? And kill off the rest of the world. They really thought that they were going to be able to accomplish this all by trusting in their wicked deeds that they're pushing forward today, okay? But this is what's happening, right? Instead of their agenda going through smoothly and everybody not being, aware of who they truly are, the Lord you know, through his prophets are starting to reveal, you know, these Edomites to the rest of the world. And this is where you get this.
Racist white guy gets his mouth shut.
In your battle with my brother Angry Monk, you said you give a native a history lesson. But there ain't no question that I can't stand a man who takes pride in genocide. Enslaved our children or raped our women. You said there was so much pride. Well, Pi, be proud of that shit. But bitch, don't forget the ones who taught you how to exist. Don't forget the ones who taught you how to exist. Y'all sick bastards came off of that ship, snatched up an underage Pocahontas. Your ancestors were pedophiles. Fuck all you John Smiths. I said, yo, so let's reenact. Yo, hold it down. Let's reenact the battle. Fuck peace, I want war. This chief came here tonight to leave with the head of a conquistador. Because I see the kink in your arm and you got no, I see the kink in your arm and you got no honor. I love my culture, love the way I was brought up, and my natives only say it's a good day to die because we know our children will see tomorrow. I said, and you called us cowards with arrows and bows. Yeah, but it takes a real woman and man to live life and let the hardships unfold. Y'all came in search of gold, but I said y'all came in search of gold, but it only took 2 arrows in you snakes to see that there's a price on your soul. Yeah.
Hey, we battle not against flesh and blood. Hey, this is real talk. I said Israel. In Hebrew, it means Yah contends. In other words, you like to wrestle with God. Well, tonight, you picked a fight with God's son. Really, it's like you wrestling with God. I got a weapon that's kind of odd. It's fire. You can't see it. I call it ether. Hit your soul. That's Mortal Kombat with the preacher. I told you I'm here to teach you. 86% of your people got skin cancer in their features. You in a land that don't receive it. I told you I'm here to teach you. 86% of your people got skin cancer in their features. You in a land.
So there you go. So it goes on, and we've all seen these videos, right? We've all seen how now the what we would consider maybe the 2/3 of Israel, right? The Israelites who are unwoken up to the truth of what's really going on. Now they're starting to see these Edomites for who they are. They're starting to see that they're not the people of the land of Israel, right? That they're not the people of the Bible, right? They know. Some of them know that, you know, they're Edomites. Others just know that they're the devils, right? That they're wicked, right? But let's read this. This is 2 Thessalonians 2:8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yahweh shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, right? The spirit of the Lord's mouth are all the prophets that the Lord has raised up. You know, starting with Abba Bivens all the way down to today. All the brothers who are out here teaching this truth to our people, making these lessons. That's the spirit of the Lord that is consuming these devils by putting this truth out, and by ultimately putting these ideas and this knowledge and these historical events into the people's general knowledge, right? Into the ether, I guess you could say, right? And that's how this is starting to permeate out to the people. And what's happening? These devils are being consumed, right? They're being consumed with the spirit of the Lord's mouth, right? And that's why they can't hide themselves, okay? And because of that, this is Jeremiah 49:10. But I have made Esau bare, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren, and his neighbors, and he is not. You see that? Because what's happening, just like that Gadite who was rapping, man, he straight said it, man. There is a price on these devils' souls, right? See, our children will see tomorrow, but these devils, there's a time clock on their time here, man, and it's almost running out. right? And that's why the Lord is ultimately revealing them, right? And this is why everybody is starting to recognize that these Edomites, they are the wicked of the Bible. Now, not everybody has made that connection yet, that they're the Bible, that they're the devils that the Bible speaks of, but that's going to come soon, because the Bible says it's going to come soon, right? And this is why, and this is why all these little, supposedly funny things that these devils do by dressing up as the devil and, making fun of things like this and just being perverted in their nature, right? They do things like this, right? This is just the weirdness and just the wickedness that is glorified amongst these people in particular, right? They glorify in like their savagery, right? And they call other people savages, right? Right? They do stuff like this, free hugs from Satan, right? Look at this shit, man. Right? All this right here, they think this is just, them being edgy, weird. No, man, this honestly is the spirit of Satan coming out in people, right? You don't see this happening in so-called Negroes, Latinos, or Native Americans, right? Or Arabs or Chinese. And if it does, I'll bet my bottom dollar that the father of that individual is an Edomite, right? Because you got to remember, right? Not every Edomite is going to look like a so-called white person, right? They're going to look Asian, Mexican, Negro, Latino, right? But they're going to have these traits. They're going to have certain things like this, okay? That they're going to, what does it say? What is your greatest wish? I just want to punch God in the face. You see that? And check this out, right? These devils here are glorifying this, right? But see, ultimately, with all these little things, all these little traits, these spiritual markers that these Edomites are known for, right? Which people just say, oh, that's it sounds about white, or it's tends to be, this is what they do, right? These things are starting to reveal that these Caucasians are the devils that the Bible speak of, right? And that is because their true identity are the Edomites, right? And eventually, like I said, the world will understand this, right? That these Edomites, that they're the devils that the Bible speaks of, right? And this video here is a beautiful representation of it, man. It's hilarious, right? See, because it's funny, right? They're making fun of themselves, but they're straight up telling on themselves, right? And it's not just us saying this, right? This isn't just, randomly just us Israelites coming out here and we don't like white people, so hey, they're the devils. No, it's because they themselves have actually told on themselves, right? The Bible tells you that their own tongue shall fall upon themselves, right? This is why you got books like the 13th Tribe, right, from Arthur Koestler, right? That shows that the so-called Jews of today are not the Jews of the Bible, right? You got William Beeston, right? It's a book written in the 1800s that talks about the Roman Empire, the empire of the Edomites, right? He himself is an Edomite, right? Then you also got the famous book, Who is Esau Edom, right? Where basically you had the American Edomites trying to point the finger to the so-called Jewish Edomites, right? The Amalekites, right? Small Hatters, right? But the surprise is on both of them, man, because they're both Edomites, okay? This is Revelations 13:10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Because you see, ultimately, these Edomites, right, in this mural that was created during the Byzantine Empire, shows that back then they understood that the Caucasian race, right, what they refer to as the red people, right, because when you get into books back in from the Roman period, they didn't call white people, right? Yes, they called them Idumeans, but they also referred to them, right, the Japhetic Kittimites, right? The Kittim was the name of Rome before it was Rome, referred to these Edomites as red people with yellow hair, okay? And this is ultimately what these people were known as. So this is why this picture here depicts the Archangel Michael, right? destroying Satan, but also enslaving these Edomites, the red people, okay? Because like I just read, this is the future of these Edomites, and they understand this, right? Those who have learned and have not tried to lie and misplace and misinterpret the scriptures and trying to make up lies so that way they don't feel bad, like Vocab Malone and all these other failed pastors and theologians who are trying to lie and skew the scriptures so that way it can fit their narratives. They understand that they're going to go into slavery. This is Romans 3:3. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of God without effect? And the answer is no, right? The thing is like I said, it doesn't matter if the world doesn't believe this, because this is the true narrative of what's going on in the universe, right? This is what's literally happening, right? The Lord, who is the main character, right? This is what his truth is that he rose up a particular group of people. That would be the Israelites, right? Who today are known as the Negro Latinos, the Native Americans, which also falls upon anybody whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline, right? And he's also set up the opposite of the Israelites, right? That would be the Edomites, the so-called Caucasian race, which are currently in rulership right now. And they will eventually be put out of rulership. And before they are put out of rulership, they're going to be revealed, right, as the sons of perdition, perdition meaning destruction, and that they're going to be revealed for who they are, right? And that's what's happening right now. This is why you have this whole trans movement going on. Yes, there's a secular world reason, because Amalek right now is fighting with the American Edomites to take them out of power and to destroy America. But ultimately what's happening in this internal struggle between the house of Satan, right? Because right now Satan is fighting Satan, or how the Bible also describes it as the Egyptian versus the Egyptian. They are revealing themselves, and in revealing themselves, the world is starting to see these devils for who they are, right? And like I said, time's almost up, right? And these, the Lord's about to show up, and these Edomites are about to be taken out. So with all that, Akim, just, hopefully this video was edifying. Salaki went a little bit too long, but I want to end this off with this great video, right, to show you that not all these Edomites are blind to what's really happening, man. In fact, check this out. Shalom, Akim.
I'm bowing down to you, Hebrew Israelites. I know that you, the Negroes, the Hispanics, and the Native Americans, that you are the true Hebrew Israelites, whereas us, the so-called white people, that we are the Edoms, according to the Bible. I've heard that many of you consider it a beautiful thing, seeing some of us, the Edoms, so-called white men, bowing down to you, because it is the sign of our demonic rule coming to an end. And therefore I think that it is my duty to show you my respect and my utter humbleness. I am desperate. I am desperate because I know that the Creator of the heavens and the earth hates me. He marked me with the leopard's pale skin, and I know that I deserve to be hated. I know that I'm burdened with terrible atrocities and terrible sins of my race. I know that I have demonic propensities myself, demonic inclinations, and that I'm too weak to keep them restrained. I know that hardcore slavery is a righteous punishment for me, and I know that I not only deserve it, that I also need it, that I need to be ruled with an iron rod. I only beg you, please, when I'm your slave, please remember how I humbled myself. Now, when our kingdom still lasts, I am bowing down to you, Hebrew Israelites. I am bowing down to you to the point that my face touches the ground.